Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to find us online. We're live every weekday from 3 to 5 right here on this station, pastorscottshow.com. You find our podcast, live stream, social media, and all of that. We're talking about issues of the day from a Christian perspective on the Pastor Scott Show. You know, one of the big issues of the day is it's always marriage, but something that's happened in our culture today is there's a big push to be against marriage by many people, young people, against marriage or against having kids, against having a family. And that is based on a whole lot of things that aren't true. With me to talk about it is Dr. Greg Smalley. He's the author of a book called 9 Lies That Will Destroy Your Marriage and the Truth That Will Save It and Set It Free. Greg Smalley, welcome back to the Pastor Scott Show. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing great and very happy to be married and wanting to tell that story to anybody who's saying, you know what, maybe we don't want to do that.
I know because it's scary for so many, especially young couples who maybe haven't seen a good model, or maybe they see the high divorce rates and go, "Hey, can we really make this work?" Because I think so many couples have bought into some lies, strategies that they try to make work in their marriage that sadly just don't work. And certainly the culture pushes hard for this, but I tell you what, our churches preach some of these messages about marriage that they can't work, and that's what's unfortunate.
Hmm.
And so that's why I love to be able to talk to couples about some of these things that we've bought into that just will never get us to where we want.
Let's talk about some of those things. And like you said, we might have heard these at church, right?
Yeah.
They're sort of I was going to say old wives' tales, but that's probably the wrong term for this subject. But they're rumor or ideas. Is it true that 50% of all marriages fail? That's usually what I hear. I don't think that's right.
It's not, and so it's closer to about 37%,
Yeah.
and so still nothing that we want, but that means that there's actually a whole lot of couples out there that are making marriage work. We don't usually hear about that. We hear about the high divorce rate, but it's 100% not 50%.
Yeah, I bet
So,
that's when we hear in our churches a lot, actually,
yeah,
when we talk about
yeah.
this. So you wrote a book about this, and I think that there's a lot of things that I hear particularly young couples say today that are not really true. What's an example of another lie that our culture has come to believe about marriage, but it's not true?
Yeah, I tell you one that the culture really preaches, because my wife and I cringe every time we're watching a show, a movie, something. You hear it every single time. I just want you to be happy. And we have preached this message that marriage is about happiness. I'm not against happiness. It's just that's not the right goal.
Hmm.
If my end in mind, if my goal is that I'm gonna experience happiness, that Aaron's gonna just be happy, then what do we do in those times in real life to where we're frustrated, we're disappointed, something's going on, we're going through a hard season? I mean, it was the Apostle Paul in First Corinthians 7 where he talks about for those who marry, you will face hard times,
That's right.
and that's the reality. You don't see that verse preached at very many weddings, you know, and yet the truth is that much like any sort of journey, and that's why I love the analogy for marriage. The what instead of happiness, what I like to talk to couples about is think about your marriage being this incredible journey that you're going to hike into the mountains. I live in Colorado, so I'm staring at the beautiful Pikes Peak, these beautiful mountains. And because on that adventure, on that journey of hiking together, you're going to have the good times, the fun times, the times where you're looking at the incredible view, walking next to a little waterfall or a river, having a wonderful time. You're going to have times that are hard, that are frustrating, that are painful, and that's what marriage is about. It's about all of it. It's just recognizing that we're on this incredible journey together, and it's going to have highs and lows. It's going to have all of it. And therefore, what if our goal just becomes about how do we do this journey in the best way together as a team. You and I journeying together, walking together on this incredible adventure called marriage. And it's going to have its good and its bad. It's going to have all of it. And so thus it's not about happiness. It's about going, God, how do you want to use our marriage? How can we bless others? What do you want us to do with this thing called marriage? And so that's you know growth. Like for those who've ever been climbing a mountain, you get high enough, there's no growth. It's just barren.
Mm.
It's just a bunch of rocks. The growth happens in the valley, and that's the beautiful part of adventuring together in life is that God's gonna grow us, you know, and we're gonna see the fruit of that, not at the highs, but during the lows. And that's what I get excited to help couples understand. Let's not make this about happiness. Let's make this about purpose, about you and I together on this cool adventure, and we'll just keep climbing together and figure it out as we go along. Enjoy it when it's fun, deal with it when it's hard, but man, let's just keep climbing together.
You-
That to me is success.
I think that's something that when you're experiencing that, you understand that, right? If you're a
Right.
hiker and you get to the top of the mountain, you understand how great it is to be up there. And when
Right.
you've been in the deep valleys of life and then you've gotten through them, you understand how important that period of time was, even if you wish you didn't have it. But
Right.
we live in a culture that's trouble adverse, right? We try to make everything painless, and that in itself
Right.
is a lie, right? That's not true. You're going to go through pain, married or not. You're going to have trouble relationally and with other people.
Totally. We unfortunately do this with our kids. We want to insulate them, protect them
Mm,
from harm, from making poor choices. And I always tell my kids, man, mom and I, we want you guys to fail forward. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna make poor choices. We're not gonna try to keep you from that. We actually want you to go through those hard moments because it's in those moments that God's going to grow you. You're going to get taught something. You're going to take something and grow forward. And that's the same with marriage. I mean, please don't hear me. I much prefer the mountaintops. I much prefer the fun times where we're picnicking by the cool waterfall. Like that's I would much rather have that, but I trust that God is going to use those hard moments to grow us more like him, to grow our marriage stronger. And growth is the right goal.
yeah.
Happiness, horrible goal. Growth, awesome. Because again, let's just do this together and just keep moving forward and keep learning and growing. And you know what? We'll never get there. We'll never get to the top of the mountain until we go home to be with the Lord. But that's okay because we're sure going to enjoy this thing called marriage. Hard, good, all of it.
You're listening to the Pastor Scott Show. My guest is Dr. Greg Smalley. He serves as the Vice President of Marriage and Family Formation at Focus on the Family. He's also the host of a podcast with his wife, Erin, called Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage Podcast. You can find that wherever you get your podcast, Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. He is the author or co-author, I think I should say, of a book, right, called Nine Lies That Will Destroy Your Marriage. And when I think we are in this culture, as we were talking about this, where there's just a lot of things that people have come to um, believe that aren't true. So in your book, there are several different love lies. Um, one of them is this. Explain this to me. It's 1 + 1 = 1. I've heard that before from church.
Yeah,
1 + 1 = 1. What is that
yeah.
supposed to mean, and what's true?
Yeah, think of Genesis 2:24. A man should leave his father and mother, and cleave to his wife, the two shall become one. That idea of one flesh, I think, is so often misapplied within our church. You think of the unity candle
Right.
ceremony that at a wedding, you've got three candles, one represents her, one represents him, one represents the marriage. So what do? They take the two individual candles that are lit in this beautiful sweeping ceremony. They light the one candle together. And then what do? They always blow out the individual candles. just leave the one kind of marriage oneness candle burning bright for all to see. I want to stand up and object, not to them getting married, to that idea, because when we get married, one flesh, oneness is about unity and purpose in where are we heading in life. It's not sameness.
Hmm.
The two individuals still exist. And that's why I love the truth to teach couples is that in a marriage, there's three very important things you've got to continue to grow and nurture. That's you as an individual. So him, her, and us. All three have to matter. The marriage isn't the only thing that we need to be focused on. That's idolizing something that God never intended to happen. God sent his son to die for people, not for marriage. So the individuals have to matter. They have to be well cared for. You need two whole, full, healthy individuals who are then creating the kind of relationship together that's healthy in order to have a marriage that's flourishing. And so that's how we have subtly taken this idea of oneness and misapply it to only think about how do we keep our marriage strong?
Yeah.
And we forget the two individuals,
That's
and that
probably
can't ever work.
That's probably how you end up with people trying to change each other and like, why can't you be more
Right,
like me, right? Because we're supposed to be
right,
one, and we're always going to agree, and everything is always perfect, and
right.
that ends right after the honeymoon. Typically, I think honeymoon. What I always tell the couples is honeymoon. It means sweet month, and after that, you've got a spouse, right? You gotta
Right,
you're gonna have to
and
work at it.
that's
But the work is good, right? When we talk about
it
that, even you
is.
and I, like we want to be honest with people. Hey, there's you got to put in some work, but the work is good when you do it. It makes the marriage much better.
It is. And the work means that how am I making sure that as an individual that I'm growing more like Christ? How am I making sure that I'm full, whole, and healthy, sustained by God? I always tell people I love my wife. We've been married now 34 years. We're both marriage counselors. We get to minister together. I want to spend every moment of my life on this earth with her. I love my wife. I want my wife. I don't need my wife. I
Mm.
need God. And that's the difference is that Aaron was never meant to be my source of fulfillment in this life. That's reserved for God. So therefore as an individual, how am I staying plugged into him? How am I making sure that I'm well cared for? That I'm doing that job. Aaron's doing that job for her, and so when you have two full, whole, healthy people, now we're we're set to be successful as we build the kind of marriage, then the relationship between us that's flourishing. That's when we communicate and go on date nights and work through conflict and have intimacy together. But all three of those have to matter, or the marriage will never ever work out
Yeah.
as the way God designed it.
I think that's a big deal because one of the other love lies in your book, we're talking with Dr. Greg Smalley, and the book is called Nine Lies That Will Destroy Your Marriage. One of the other lies that you talk about in the book is this one: I must sacrifice who I am for the sake of the marriage. And that's the
Yeah,
wrong move. You have to sacrifice, right? That you have to sacrifice and give of yourself, but you don't have to sacrifice who you are. There's a difference.
right. Well, because what we're taught is the goal is just simply to sacrifice, but so many people do that from a place of emptiness. So what are you sacrificing? You, the individual. You're not you have nothing to actually give away. And so all we're saying, if you're going to sacrifice like we're being called to throughout scriptures, that the way to do that is to make sure that you have something to give. The individuals have to matter. God placed value within us. He sent his son to die for us. That means
Mm.
we're valuable to him. He defines our value. And therefore, stewarding our value as individuals means that we make sure that we're plugged into the Lord. We have something to give. That's what we're then sacrificing. We're taking all this work that we're doing to make sure we're a healthy individual so that I can just then give that away to another person. And then when I'm poured out, then I just go back to the well, God, and make sure that I'm full. I mean, Jesus modeled that, right?
Mm,
The feeding of the 5,000. He shows up there exhausted. Instead of preaching, what does he do? He gets in a boat, pushes off, spends some time recharging with God, gets filled back up, and goes and sacrifices and performs this beautiful miracle. That's the piece that's missed. Sacrifice is awesome. Sacrificing from emptiness will never work.
right. I think that's really important to hear. When you've talked to a lot of couples, I've talked to a lot of couples, and you kind of know right away when there's an expectation problem or there's a lie that somebody's trying to accomplish. Sometimes that happens before the marriage. Like as soon as I say the vows, all of
Right.
life gets better.
Right.
For some reason, that's a thing. One of the lies in your book, I'm talking with Dr. Greg Smalley, and the book is about the different lies about marriage, 9 lies that will destroy your marriage. One of them is you win some, you lose some. What does that mean?
Yeah, sadly, we've bought into this idea that when we have to make a decision, so Aaron wants something, I want something, what we see couples do is that they battle, they get into these power struggles. I want this, you want that. They've bought into the idea that although a win-win is ideal, sometimes someone feels as though they're losing. It's not
Hmm.
the ideal, but we still kind of it happens. Such a lie. The truth is that we're on the same team. We either will win together or we're going to lose together. There is no such thing as a win-loss in marriage. And that's what we watch couples try to figure out is although not the ideal, this win-loss idea seems to we settle for that at times. And all I'm ever saying is that you're on the same team. Therefore, how about when we need to make a decision about something, we do that in a way to where we both feel great about the decision. It's not you getting your way, it's not her getting her way. Let's as a team figure out something that feels good to both of us. That's what Aaron and I, that's exactly when we go in to make a decision, we verbally say to each other, you know what? The only acceptable solution here is something that feels good to you and to me. We don't
Mhm.
say compromise. We don't even use
Hmm.
that word. We're just saying, hey, let's find a solution that we both feel good about.
And
And that's a very different direction to pursue as a
yeah,
couple.
that's very different, but that keeps you on the same team and winning as a family because eventually you're talking
Right.
about kids and everything involved, finances, the whole thing. How do we win together
All
moving
of it.
forward?
Right.
That's so good. My guest is Dr. Greg Smalley, and he serves as the Vice President of Marriage and Family Formation at Focus on the Family. And he and his wife, Erin, also host a podcast. The podcast is called Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. You can find that wherever you get your podcast, Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. We just have a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave couples and tell us just briefly about your podcast?
Yeah, what Aaron and I love to do is we love to get really transparent and real and say, hey, here's what we're going through as a couple of 34 years as marriage counselors. This is what we see. Let's have that real discussion. So we tackle every single issue that you could imagine. And how do we live that out according to scripture? What have we learned as a couple? But what do we see as marriage therapists? And so we just love to have those real
Hmm.
conversations. You can go on to crazy little thing called marriage.com. You can actually leave us a voicemail, ask us a question, we'll answer that for you. And so that's the kind of ministry that Aaron and I love to do together. And a lot of it is taking these lies and saying, hey, here's how that messes us up. Let's talk about the truth. That instead of that, what else can we do to live out this beautiful gift that God's given us called marriage?
I think that's really helpful for people who are listening. Some are saying, well, I believe a lot of those lies, or we've been married a long time, and you know what? There's a lot of losing on my side, or I've lost myself. You know,
Yeah.
the podcast and the resources that you have at Focus on the Family are a great help for that. And I want to encourage people that you can start stepping in the right direction. That you don't, it's not just over, right? We can actually make great improvements.
Right. We can. There's beautiful hope. I mean, that's the message of the gospel is that God sent his son to die for us. There's always hope. And
That's
this
right.
is a God that created marriage. There's always hope. And there's great help available. And Aaron and I love being a part of whatever help you need. Man, let's dig in, roll our sleeves up, and let's figure this out together.
All right, let's do it today. Dr. Greg Smalley, thanks for joining me on the Pastor Scott Show today.
Thank you.
Once again, the podcast is Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage, the Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage podcast with Dr. Greg and Aaron Smalley. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. And there's lots of resources for you and your marriage at focusonthefamily.com as well. This is the Pastor Scott Show. You can get our podcast at pastorscottshow.com. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back, everybody. We are live. It's the day after Easter. Hope you're doing well. Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com. Phone number is 888-528-2557. Go to clip number 1.
There's a new and somewhat unexpected story emerging inside American churches. Not decline, but growth. According to the New York Times, Catholic dioceses across the country are reporting a sharp increase in adult conversions, with some seeing their highest numbers in years. In Detroit, more than 1,400 new Catholics expected this Easter, a 21-year high. In Washington, nearly 1,800 will join, also up from last year. And it's not just happening in one region. The Times reports this trend is showing up in large and small dioceses alike. Meanwhile, the Washington Post takes us inside one parish in New York City where attendance has jumped 20% in just the last 6 months, with services now so packed that people are turned away at the door. And this is not limited to Catholicism. According to another New York Times report, Orthodox Christian churches also seeing a surge, with priests describing record numbers of new converts, many of them young men. So across different traditions, a similar pattern is emerging.
That is CNN yesterday talking about or this weekend, yesterday, that would be this weekend, talking about the pattern of young people, Generation Z, especially going back to church. It's funny to me that CNN, even Fox, all of them, they don't know much about Protestantism. It's sort of inside media baseball, but I'm not putting down the others there, but you'll always hear that Catholicism or Orthodox and then other traditions. Huge numbers are also happening in evangelical Protestant churches, however you define that. In fact, the only churches really that you're finding significant decrease in younger people are more of your old line denominational churches that are stuck in an old sort of theologically liberal mindset. The young people are going to church in really big numbers across the board, and we're seeing that in all of our major cities. I wonder if you noticed that in Easter at your church, or maybe yesterday was the first day you've been to church in a long time, or maybe the first time ever. What did you notice? Was Easter any different, or was it kind of the same for you at your church? 888-528-2557 is the number, 888-528-2557. You can call now. This is the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557 is the number. You know, and in that interview there, or that report on CNN, and I've heard this with many other people, it's surprising, right? And is what they say. They use that term, it's surprising. That's because about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, the entire notion was that church is done, that generationally, even just a few years ago, generationally, there are just not going to be people going to church, and that's going to change things over time. That has completely reversed. In fact, the COVID numbers for Gen Z, remember that period of time when we had the COVID a few years ago?
They really should wear the mask.
Well, that COVID, right before that, it was the smallest number of young people, Generation Z, going to church. And it wasn't looking good. Now that number has doubled. And as a matter of fact, according to Barna's State of the Church research, and according to other research, there's lots of research, University of Chicago, other places that do this kind of research. This is what they found, that the typical Gen Z churchgoer, ages 18 to 28, relatively, is where that age is, attends 1.9 weekends a month, so twice a month, basically, going to church. Edging out millennials at 1.8. That's higher than Gen X, 1.6. I'm Gen X. What's up, Gen X people? You got to get back to church. You can you'd be surprised. There's people younger than you there now. Boomers at 1.4. That number's going down a little bit because boomers are getting older and a lot of folks aren't making it to church because of health reasons and things like that. That's the case. But I think an interesting figure is that Generation Z's pandemic era rate, which was less than once a month in 2020 for that generation, is now twice as much. And it's being called a generational reversal, where it's the first generational reversal actually in decades, in a very, very long time, I think since maybe World War II, where younger adults outpace older ones in going to church regularly. That's an incredible statistic, especially considering just a few years ago, that didn't look like that was going to be the case. The overall trend among young people shows much broader growth even around the world. In UK Bible Society, data noted that 18 to 24-year-olds monthly church attendance rose from 4%, only 4% in the UK, by the way. Kind of wondering what's going on in other parts of the world and what it looked like was going to eventually happen here. 4% 2018 to 16% in 2025. That's huge difference. Young men especially jumped up to 21%. U.S. pastors earlier this year, a Barna report, increased engagement from Gen Z. 45% of Protestant pastors saw higher involvement, and millennials 42%. So a lot of millennials going back to church also, and a big Easter surge. That is a significant change. Why do you think that is? Why all of a sudden, especially in the last 7 years, are people going back to church, especially young people, and especially in a time when young people are told, church is silly, church is a waste of time, everything's the same. There's just so much stuff in the, especially the 2010s, really, anti-church, down on going to church, and now it's pretty big. Why do you think the changeover? Did you notice that? Have you noticed that at your church? A lot of it's happened really just in the last few months. Actually, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. All versions of Christianity, except for liberal Protestant denominations, are reporting very large growth recently. That's true with evangelicals, a funny word. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today. It used to mean Christians who still believe in the Great Commission, that your job is to make disciples of all nations, that's an evangelical. Now it's something that I think people have sort of used that to label. What's funny is that this person was pointing out that it's labeled sort of as, conservative white churches, which is nuts because there's many evangelicals across the board. In fact, some denominations that are ethnic are often called evangelical church. I've spoken at ethnic churches that are evangelical right in the title, right there. But we've sort of lost what that word means. And it's those words, we throw them around in history and you get different things. We need to be people who are following Christ, who are the Christ followers and truly following Christ, not just pointing to a guy and we like some of his teaching, but we're not really following who he is. People who actually are following the Great Commission. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that Jesus has commanded. It's that obey word that throws some people off, that people don't like very much. For some places, it's teaching them what Jesus taught them, and we leave out the parts that require your obedience. No, it's teaching them to obey everything that Jesus has commanded us. 888-528-2557. So what was your Easter like? Your Easter experience does this data reflect what you've noticed or not necessarily where you're at? 888-528-2557. Maybe you've got a story too where you went to church for the first time or you brought somebody to church who hasn't been going or has never gone. That's another thing, particularly with Gen Z. There are so many people going to church now who have never been to church. So my generation and generations that maybe are older than me, Gen X or older, probably you went to Sunday school. You probably, for a period of your life, you went to Sunday school, you went to VBS, Vacation Bible School, if you don't know what that is, and you've had some church experience. You were in youth group for a while, you went to camp, you did something. But now, millennials and Gen Z, by huge numbers, have never been to church at any kind of service at all. Nothing. And they're going to church for the very first time without any expectations. I had a conversation with a young lady at our church one Sunday. She was 18. She just became a student at UCSD. And she actually, this is what she said to me. Somebody introduced her to me and said, she's never been to church before. And I said, any church? And she said, yeah, I've never been to any church. She goes, what goes on in there? She's pointing, we're outside. She's pointing to the sanctuary. What goes on in there? And I said, well, we bring in a goat. And she kind of got this horrified look on her face. And then I said, no, we don't do that. Well, then I talked her through it. But, you know, when I go visit a church, I probably have a pretty good, and I'm pastor, I've got a lot of experience my whole life, right? But I generally know what's going to happen. And if I go to different denominations or different groups, I have a real good idea of how that works. I can't imagine that you've never been to church. You don't know that somebody's going to greet you. They're going to hand you something. You're going to have some songs. There's going to be a sermon. She didn't know. And she's not alone in that. So a lot of people are going to church who have no expectation at all. They don't know what to expect in that. 888-528-2557. Ted in L.A., welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Pastor Scott, City of the Angels, Ted.
Hi, Ted.
Yeah, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How was your Easter?
It was a blessing. He is risen.
He is risen indeed. See, if you go to church, you know you say that. But I bet if you never go to church, you have no idea what that meant. Go ahead, Ted. We got about a minute.
That's true. That is true. And you know, I don't know about the attendance and everything. I mean, if you go out to John MacArthur's church, I mean, that's very conservative, and they seem to be growing leaps and bounds. So I wouldn't go by that. I just think that the Holy Spirit is moving, and that kids are not stupid. They can determine and do their own research that it is the truth and the way, and they want to find a better way, and they're waking up to the fact that it is the truth. And what I'm really excited about is, Pastor Scott, is we're actually going to have some people that know how to sing now, because these kids don't know how to sing, you know, because the best singers always came out of the church, whether it was Whitney Houston or, you know, the king of rock and roll. Elvis Presley. I mean, let's
do you
go
think
down the
because
list.
of this, we're going to have a new Whitney Houston? And you know what? There probably is something to that. But we'll see. Ted, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557 is the number. You know, that's kind of not the direction I was looking at. However, here's the interesting question for you. If we really are in a revival and people are going back to church, or church for the first time, it is going to impact the culture. And actually, he's right about that. Is if more people are going to church, you're going to have more singers. That's not what church is about. But a real revival impacts the culture in some other ways, and maybe we can talk about that when we get back. Chris in Burbank, I'll get your call when we come back. I got to take a break. 888-528-2557 is the phone number, 888-528-2557. How was your Easter? What have you noticed? We'll be right back in the Pastor Scott Show. Welcome back, everybody. We are live. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. How was your Easter? Were there more people there, younger people? What's it look like? What is your experience? All the studies are saying that many, many more young people than at least in a very long time are back in church, and often in church for the first time. 888-528-2557 is the number. Chris in Burbank, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hello, Pastor Scott. How are you today?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to share about kids attending church. I just wanted to share my personal experience. I planted a seed with my kids where I took them to church when they were very young.
Yeah.
And although we stopped going to church for a while, now they're all in their 20s, and believe it or not, they chose to go back to church on their own, and I wasn't surprised, and I'm very happy. They all went to church for Easter, and they're setting an example for me to go back to church, so I just wanted to share that.
That's really cool. So your kids, they went on their own, which is what you want. You know, kids often will leave the church, but they were really just going to church because mom wanted them to go, right? They need to go on their own. And why did... Yeah, go ahead.
And they actually said to me, why don't you stop going to church with us? Why did we not continue to go to church? And that made me feel really bad, because as a mother, you think or you feel that they're not going to remember that, but they do. That they remember Jesus. That's very powerful. They do. That seed gets planted into children, into people, no matter how young. It doesn't matter how young they are. They remember that. There's something about being at church and them hearing the stories about Jesus that moves something within them, because my kids chose to go to church and take their friends with them as well.
Yeah. You know what? That is exactly what we are experiencing in our culture is people in their 20s especially going to church even when they didn't go or they haven't been for a long time or their families didn't. So when you think about that, if you want to share, why did you feel like you stopped going to church? What happened there?
It was only because my husband didn't want to go to church, and I should have just gone to church with my kids. Even though he didn't want to go, I should have continued to go because I really did want to be there, and I wanted my kids to be there. But I thought that we had to go. I wanted us to go as a family, but I should have continued to. I should have kept going to church, although my husband did not want to go with us at times.
That's a lot of people have that situation, but you know what? Your kids heard something, at the small time they've been there, or they've heard it somewhere. And one of the things the scriptures tells us is in Isaiah chapter 55. So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve for the purpose for which I sent it. The story you're telling is what a lot of young people are experiencing. They went to church maybe one time, but they heard something. And they recognize later in life when they become adults and they begin to realize the way the world is and all of that, that the truth, they've heard it before and they discover it's a church. And so I think that's great news. Are you going to be able to go with your kids or go someplace to church?
Well, now they've got their friends. They want to go with their friends, and that's fine. I will start going to church myself, and I will, eventually. I know somebody. I heard a story earlier this morning on the station where a woman prayed to God to bring her friend or her boyfriend to the door to tell her that he had become a Christian and he had been saved, and that when that day would arrive, that she would become a Christian. So I'm just going to pray to God and tell him, God, I'm coming back to you, but I would like for my husband to also, come to church. So I'm going to pray about it.
Yeah, well, you keep praying, and will your husband allow you to go to church? I mean, do you feel comfortable saying, hey, honey, I really feel like I should go to church. I'd like you to come with me, but I'm going to go. Is that okay with him, or would that not be okay with him?
I have invited him, and he just won't go. And I'm not forcing him to go. I figure I'm just going to pray about it because... But
he would be okay with you. He would be okay with you going?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
he's fine with me going. Yeah.
Well, then
I'm fine with that.
I think you should go, and I'll tell you what. Keep praying for your husband, and keep praying for your kids. Your kids may have a really big impact on your husband because they're going, and he's going to say, "What are you doing?" Right? It's a little different. Just like what you're experiencing, you were feeling like I should go back to school or to church because of my kids, and you know what you might want to do is find a church with a lot of men, because one day when he comes with you, that's going to help him a lot to make sure that there's.
Yes, I pray that like the woman's story earlier this morning. I pray that God will make that happen. Where I can go to a church where there's a lot of men. Yeah,
do that, because sometimes, sometimes in some churches things become very flowery, and us guys we tolerate it, but we don't really like it. But it's it's just a thing. It doesn't mean it's not for you also, but you want to make sure that he's not the only guy looking around going, I'm losing some points here by being here. Have him pray that he pursues Jesus and invite him to a church with other men that'll greet him warmly.
Yes, Pastor Scott, and if you could keep him in my prayers, his name is Ray.
All right, I'm going to pray for Ray right now and you. Again, God, I thank you for Chris and for the great blessing of her kids going to church and this weekend and getting back in church on their own, with their own decision. And God, we know that so many people listening are having that same experience, and what a great thing that is. And I pray that you help Chris find a great church. And you said your husband's Ray?
Yes.
Yeah, and I pray for Ray that you would convict his heart, that you would cause him to be recognizing that he needs a Savior in Jesus Christ. And I pray that you help Chris find the right church to go to, and that he would go with her and hear the word and come to saving faith in Jesus Christ. In your name we pray, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Chris, thank you for sharing that. That's so meaningful, and it's exciting about your kids. It's so exciting.
Thank you very much, Pastor Scott.
All right, Chris, have a good one. Thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. That is exactly what's happening in our country. So as you pray for our country and you pray for a generation that isn't going to church because mom and dad or grandma is forcing them to go, or they're doing it to please, you might have gone to church yesterday to keep peace in your home. There's a lot of that. I used to like to say some of you are coming to church because you have a drug problem. Your mom drug you to church. And, there's a lot of that going on. But there's a lot of young people, all the studies are saying, and I've noticed this at my church. I've noticed this in a way that I haven't seen since the 90s, probably, the number of young people going to church and being excited about church and going on their own. Not because mom and dad. That's what the studies are saying. And I think it's because the phone number is 888-528-2557 if you want to join the conversation. We have a couple of minutes left, 888-528-2557. But when they ask the question, why? Loneliness and digital burnout is one of them, and you can go to church and find real community where you go and you're not just watching it on TV. You go and you're with people and you have shared experiences with something that's important. And then the next one is a search for purpose and hope because of the uncertain world we live in. I think that's what's happening with a lot of the young adults and even the high school kids that I interact with a lot, because I have high schoolers. What those kids are saying is, we have watched our parents, we have watched our own friends get trapped in a system in this world that challenges everything that's true, right down to male and femaleness. And we have watched people wreck their lives. We've watched our parents wreck their lives. We've watched our grandparents, in many cases, wreck their lives with alcohol or drugs or lifestyle choices of different kinds, and or just philosophy of life and negativity and hopelessness that is out there. And they've said, you know what? Life can't be about this, and everything's going to be wrecked. I think this young generation is noticing this. And they look back and they go, let's look at faith and going to church that offers beauty, tradition, answers, people who aren't afraid to actually answer or talk about questions. And I think young men is the huge number of young men. And I think the women are going to come along, but we need to pray for that. Easter, of course, is about the resurrection story. This is the story that is so powerful because our ultimate hope is in Easter. If you take a class, if you're going to college somewhere and you take a class, the class says, it's biology class, death is the cycle of life, right? Is that people are born and you go through all these different things and then eventually you die. It's just the cycle of life, and that's the way it is. The problem is that the way we feel about it is that death is the enemy. Right? Death in this life is the enemy. We're talking about a war. We're talking about the death in the war. We're talking about the death that we see with disease, death all around us. And death eventually robs you of the people that you love. It will rob you of your grandparents. It will rob you of your parents one day. In tragedy, it will rob you of your own kids. It will rob you of your friends. And eventually death comes for you. Everybody knows that. And if you don't have an answer for that, it's pretty depressing. But when you look at Jesus, and you go, what is he promising? The answer is not, well, death is just the cycle of life. No, the answer is death is defeated. Where is your sting? Death. There is victory in Jesus. And the whole idea is that if you follow Jesus, you trust Jesus with your life, and you follow him in this life, you say, I trust you for my salvation, for everlasting life, then what you have to hope for is that he's going to punch a hole in death and you're going to walk right through that hole into eternity with him because he came up out of the grave. That's the powerful story of Easter, that death is defeated, that Jesus came up, the thing that's the greatest enemy, the thing that's going to cost you everything you have left in your bank account, your last couple of weeks of life, just to extend your life, even as a really old person. It's defeated. The thing that has robbed you of everything is defeated, death. That's a powerful thing. And I think people are getting that message through Jesus Christ. This is the Pastor Scott Show Monday edition. Go to PastorScottShow.com for podcast and more. PastorScottShow.com. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, Pastor Scott Show. We're live Monday. Great to be with you. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online. PastorScottShow.com. The phone number is 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557 if you want to join the conversation. On the Pastor Scott Show, we talk about issues of the day from a Christian perspective. Go to 17.
Breaking news overnight. In an extraordinary turn of events, the United States has rescued the second crew member who was in the U.S. F-15 fighter jet shot down over Iran Friday. President Trump texting me directly this morning. The rescue was an Easter miracle. The enemy was large and violent. The rescuers were brilliant, strong, decisive, and as cool as anyone can be. The Iranians thought they had him, but it wasn't even close. And remember, we got two, but couldn't talk about the first, in that it would have highlighted that there was a second. Such a rescue has never happened before in so violent an enemy territory. It is usually not done because it is considered not doable. Such a great military like no other. Adding on Truth Social, open the effing straight, you crazy or you'll be living in hell.
That was a news report about what happened this weekend, and of course, different parts of that. But if you were paying attention this weekend, a fighter plane was shot down over the weekend, and U.S. forces pulled off one of the most daring combat search and rescue missions in recent memory. It's very impressive what happened over there. And whatever you think about a lot of this stuff, we have some amazing people who serve in our armed services. There's not a word to describe this. I know some of these guys who have done this before, and there's just a different level of ability and of courage and strength that it takes to do this kind of thing, to literally risk your lives to go rescue your downed crew member, your fellow soldier. They successfully extracted both crew members from a downed F-15 Strike Eagle fighter jet from deep inside Iran's territory. That began Friday. And I remember on Friday thinking, oh boy, this is going to be bad. And I remember when we had the Iranian hostage crisis back in '79. I was just a little kid, but I have memories of President Carter, who sent a rescue mission and it failed and they crashed, and the Iranians mocked the soldiers who died. They had their bodies, they dragged their bodies around, they showed clips of the downed helicopters and stuff, and it was a failed thing. And you know what? That could easily happen at any time during these things, and I thought we're going to go through that again. That did not happen. What happened was, after a couple of days go by, the pilot was located immediately and rescued within hours, but the second crewman, seriously injured, evaded capture for more than 48 hours. He hid alone in these rugged mountains. If you've seen clips, Iran is very mountainy, and it's really huge country. It's twice the landmass of Iraq, if you're just sort of looking at it like that. And it's an incredible, incredible story that people can do when they have courage, when people can do when they are brave enough to try something. I'm going to play some clips of President Trump discussing this with the media earlier today. Let's go to clip number 12.
American F-15 fighter jet went down deep inside enemy territory in Iran while participating in Operation Epic Fury, where we're doing unbelievably well, at a level that nobody's ever seen before. The entire country can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night. Both members of the crew ejected from the aircraft and landed alive.
That is just the beginning of it. Trump, is always weaving around in the middle of that, talking about the next thing that maybe we'll get to, but maybe tonight, maybe right now. a lot of threat of significant bombing of infrastructure, and that would certainly take things to another level. But then he's talking about these pilot who got rescued. And I want to focus on that for now, because I think that's something that, when I got the messages last night that he was rescued, or Saturday night, I think is when I was getting it. I was up late Saturday night and we started to get those messages. You know what? That is pretty exciting. I think that's an exciting thing. It reminded me of when Osama bin Laden was taken out, and that mission and the bravery that was required in order to do that. War is a tough thing, because I think coming at it from a Christian standpoint, war is very tough because it's all killing and breaking things, and it's terrible. It's something that will go away in eternity. We will not have it. It will not be part of anything. The lion will lie down with the lamb, and we'll beat our swords in the plowshares. That's what we look forward to. That's what needs to happen. And we want peace here. I've got some skepticism about what's happening in Iran, because I think there's a theological problem that I'm not sure we fully grasp as far as who the leaders are of that country and what it is that they will tolerate. See, I think that in many other countries, maybe every other country of the world, if you're going to go in and bomb them the way we have, and if you're going to take out their military and their entire navy, if you're going to then maybe looks like go in and start to take out infrastructure and bridges and things like that, most would surrender, right? That would be the end of it. That you would have won, that would have been the end of it. But when you have a leadership that has a diabolical end-of-the-world vision for everything, you don't care about your infrastructure, and you don't care about your Navy being destroyed, because you just build another one later, right? You take the long game. You say you don't even care about your own lives, because someone else will come along who will do it later, when you have that kind of perspective. And that's something I think that, as you think about this war here, the theological implications of what's happening is something I worry that we miss. I think it's very, very different what's happening here. In the meantime, you are dealing with so many terrible things, and you don't want it to get worse, and you want your people to be safe. And the people who are the sons and daughters of people who people who go to your church, people who have been a part of your church, part of your business, part of your group. I remember when 9/11 happened, I was a young adult pastor. I was a young adult and a pastor, 2 young adults. And we had a bunch of Navy SEALs. I was in San Diego. A lot of people were Navy SEALs. And they came with a pretty large young adult ministry. All those guys were gone. Not dead, but left. They were there September, the week before in our meeting. And that happened on a Tuesday, 9/11, when our weekly get-together was on Thursday nights. None of them were there on Thursday. Not a one. And later I heard the story about how they were just immediately sent out. And they were up early doing what they do. They're actually, one guy said he was in a classroom, got a hand on his shoulder, and said, it's time to go. He didn't know anything about the towers or anything that happened yet. And they were gone. I only heard that from one guy who came back months later, who got stationed in San Diego. The rest, I don't even know what happened to them, to be honest. I don't know if they're alive. I don't know if they survived. They probably survived, I think. Maybe they ended up in a different command somewhere, different orders. But this is a group of people we should be grateful that we have. 888-528-2557 is the number if you want to join the conversation. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. Talking about the Iran war and the rescue of the downed pilot that happened this weekend. It was quite a story. Let's go to 13-1.
Authorities, many, on top of everything else, they told the communities actually inside of Iran, the people of Iran, they were given a tremendous incentive to find this pilot. Despite the peril, the officer followed his training and climbed into the treacherous mountain terrain and started climbing toward a higher altitude, something they were trained to do in order to evade capture. They want to always go as far away from the site of the shoot down. You want to go as far away because they all head right to that site. You want to be as far away as you can. And he was injured, and he was an amazing, amazing thing. He scaled cliff faces, bleeding rather profusely, treated his own wounds, and contacted American forces to transmit his location.
we're going to hear from that guy eventually, right? I don't know when. Maybe that's happened, but I doubt it. I mean, he's probably going to be treated. But think about that. You get shot down. You're over enemy territory, the worst of enemies, right? They're not going to treat you well. They're going to use you for propaganda. That's going to happen. And that would be bad. That would be bad for us, bad for the Iranian people. It'll be bad for everybody if that were to happen. And that's a constant danger, right? It's amazing. Honestly, it's amazing that hasn't already happened with everything that's going on. The bravery to do that, how does that make you feel? I mean, are you inspired by people who have great courage, great bravery in this way, where the odds are against them or they're doing something when they are terribly injured or in grave danger of what they're doing? To me, I find that inspiring. To me, I find that to be, beyond just the issues of what is happening. I find that to be an incredible thing. And we have so many men and women who serve who have that. That's a huge blessing for our country. So many people who, not just these particular guys, but the guys who even went in after them. Let's go to 13-2.
They have a very sophisticated beeper-type apparatus that is on them at all times. And when they go out on these missions, they make sure they have lots of battery space and they're in good shape. And this one worked really well, amazingly, saved his life. We immediately mobilized a massive operation to retrieve him from the mountain holdout. And he kept going higher and higher. The mountain kept getting rougher and rougher and really very, very hard to find. The second rescue mission involved 155 aircraft, including 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft, and more. We were bringing them all over, and a lot of it was subterfuge.
So he's talking about the deception that they were doing, and that was another thing that has been impressive in all of this, the deception that you have to have in war, which is another tension, right? Is that if you're going to have war and battle, there's going to be deception. And deception is also something that does not exist in eternity, that when we go to be with the Lord, there are no weapons of war, there's no reason for war, and there is no deception. That is, unfortunately, a part of the fallen world that we live in today. And I guess there were all kinds of different, they sent in like search parties to the wrong area on purpose. There was the CIA who were putting in a story that he was already rescued. Then somebody leaked something that is a big deal. Somebody leaked something to the media with all of that. Does this kind of thing, like when you heard the story over the weekend, do you find that inspiring? What inspires you? Like, is it something that it's a strange word to think about, but something I think that makes you think more positively, maybe about the country, or maybe about the capabilities of human beings, or maybe what God is doing to protect our country? There's a lot of moral questions that people rightly ask in these scenarios, in all this, about everybody involved. But you definitely have Iranian people who are horrifically oppressed by a government that takes away their rights, that murders them for all kinds of different reasons, that has been the largest terrorist organization in the world for 50 years. That's the evil world that we live in. At some point, you've got to have, I think, victory over even containment of that. 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557, Pastor Scott Show. Denise in L.A., welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Oh, Pastor Scott, I got a lump in my throat. It was impressive. The parajumpers for the SEAL team, I think, is who jumped. Their motto is what got to me. We do this so others can live.
Is that their motto? Like
Yes.
specifically paratroopers?
Yes.
Is that? I know that
Yes.
there's a lot of groups have a different mottos.
We do this so others can live. And that better be the name of the movie that comes out.
Everybody's already talking about the movie, and there might be, because
it's like God wrote the script. I mean, even the man who hid in the crevice of the rock, am I not hearing Rock of Ages, cleft for me?
I don't know if the movie will go that way, but that's an interesting point about that. Denise, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. I guess does it inspire you? these kinds of things, or maybe there's just something unrelated. But what gives you hope? What gives you the ability to say, you know what, I'm concerned. I got grave concerns about war, about the economy, about what that means with the oil. We got $6 gas here in Southern California, and probably going up for a while. And there's a lot of things to get down on. There's a lot of reasons to go, gosh, I don't know. But what inspires you? 888-528-2557. David in West LA, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, Pastor Scott. Just a quick thing on the Navy SEALs. You may not realize it, but many Navy SEALs are highly educated.
Yes, they are.
My daughter is a sophomore at Harvard, and last year, the guy in the room next door to her was a Navy SEAL. I mean, so these guys are not just heroic; they're very smart. They're very intelligent. They're highly educated.
They're highly, truly educated in a lot of different things.
So they're admirable people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they are. And I think people should know that, that I think that's important for people to understand, that we're not sending people, our goal, just like our last caller said, our goal is to bring people back alive, everybody. And you have to be educated to do that. You have to understand that. David, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. John in Glendale, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Yes, Scott. I was just thinking that, it was the Bolshevik Revolution that changed the world so much, because that was the first time in history in a major way that the whole objective truth paradigm was attacked by this idea of propaganda, manipulation, and illusion. And Goebbels picked it up and perfected it, and the CIA after the war, and certainly the Mossad is into it. And that's the problem. The world we're living in is all about game playing and smoke and mirrors and deception.
So what's true?
What's true is based on what's objective reality, which is fact-based reality. That's why science changed the world so much, because it's factual.
Correct. So
knowledge.
When you have
other knowledge is really subjective.
Yeah. John, I appreciate your phone call. 888-528-2557. Mark in El Segundo, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, Pastor Scott. Yeah, I'm retired Air Force, and I worked on a flight line most of my career with fighter aircraft and heavy aircraft, and they were pararescue right on the air base where I worked, and they were an elite bunch of men and women. They were absolutely fantastic. And this scenario where this lieutenant colonel, this WISO, weapons specialist officer, climbed a 7,000 mountain peak and hid in a crevice. And he has a beacon. He also has a positional light that he could turn on as well at night that flickers.
I think that's what Trump was talking about when he called it a beeper. Like,
Yeah.
he's probably thinking pager, but it's more complicated than that, I'm sure.
Yes, correct. And they have a whole survival kit in their ejection seat. So it reminded me of the movie called Bat 21, where we in Southeast Asia, we had a 56-year-old lieutenant colonel named Iceel Hamilton get shot down in Vietnam, and he was definitely countermeasures expert, and he would have been a very valuable catch to the enemy. So we ended up pulling him out of the jungle. It's a true story. The movie's called Bat 21, came out years ago. In fact, he's living in Arizona by a golf course. But this colonel was definitely amazing. I was praying for him. I was very worried about him. And if you're for the war, you're here to protect America. If you're not for the war, then I guess you want to get nuked. Because everybody that I've talked to, that I've worked with, that's from Persia, that are American citizens, or their parents came, or they came here and became an American citizen, with tears in their eyes, say that they have family there that they can't visit, and also that regime would nuke us in a second. Every single Persian person I've worked with, at least a dozen, has told me that to my face.
Yeah. Well, I think
So,
that's another part of
these are Americans that love America. These people love America. They're Persians, and they need to be liberated.
Well, I hope
and we
so.
need to protect our country.
Yeah.
So the people that aren't for that are in la la land.
Well, I think that's something that people need to understand, and that's, I think, hard, and that's why I thank you, Mark, for calling the Pastor Scott Show. It's we live in a world where we want to deny that there are people that are out there just to kill you. And that's why I think it's important that we understand the theological nature behind all of these things. I mean, there's so many different spiritual questions, but in this case, you've got the mullahs who are over there who may not care. Like I said earlier, the segment is one of the things that concerns me the most about what's happening in Iran is that do we understand that, as President Trump is saying, we're going to bomb you to the Stone Age? That might happen. I'm not sure that these guys are going to care. The guys who are running that country over there, because their motivation is they want to bring about the apocalypse through their Islamic faith, and their idea is to create as much problem, get rid of us, the great Satan, and Israel, the little Satan, and whoever else who might be not on their page. And that's quite a motivation. That's why I think some of these things that go on, and we see this kind of bravery, and we see what happened this weekend in the rescue of that pilot is inspiring. You know, inspiration is a hard word to define. What inspires you? What do you find? What kinds of things do you find inspiring? Did you find this inspiring? Maybe going to the moon is inspiring to you. 888-528-2557 is the number. 888-528-2557. This is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to PastorScottShow.com. PastorScottShow.com. We'll be back live in just a moment. Welcome back. It is the Pastor Scott Show. We are live on Monday, 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557, number 18.
I'm glad you brought that up, though. I think these observances are important, and as we are so far from Earth and looking back at, the beauty of creation, I think for me, one of the really important personal perspectives that I have up here is I can really see Earth as one thing. And, when I read the Bible and I look at all of the amazing things that were done for us who were created, it's you have this amazing place, this spaceship. You guys are talking to us because we're in a spaceship really far from Earth, but you're on a spaceship called Earth that was created to give us a place to live in the universe, in the cosmos. I think maybe the distance we are from you makes you think what we're doing is special, but we're the same distance from you, and I'm trying to tell you, just trust me, you are special.
That is astronaut Victor Glover, who is the pilot of Artemis II, and he was asked yesterday while he is on his way to the moon, and I think they're going around the moon maybe right now. Am I right about that? I feel like that's where they are. They're about to go around the moon, or they're going to go around the moon, and then they're going to start headed back. Anyway, he's the pilot, and on Easter Sunday, he was asked about what he's thinking about as he looks back and as one of the first human beings since in 50 years, more than that, to actually be able to look at the whole Earth. I don't know if you saw the pictures, but it's a remarkable thing, and people are saying it doesn't look as clear as the one that they took in 1972 that everybody's familiar with. That's because that one was in the daytime. They took a picture of the Earth from at night, where the sun is on one side and they're headed towards the moon on the other side, and the picture that you're seeing that's brand new is just lit by moonlight. So it's a little darker. The picture's great. It's really great. And because we have the ability to do that, you couldn't do that in 1972. It's an inspiring picture. It's inspiring, and especially as we're talking about war and we're talking about deception, we're talking about rescue and courage and all the things we got to deal with. And at the same time, you've got these guys up in the spacecraft going to the moon, and he was pretty inspired. Victor Glover, by the way, you need to follow this guy. He is a believer. He loves Jesus, and he has no problem working in his faith in every conversation, even the scientific conversations that he is having. And this is what he was talking about yesterday as they were reflecting on seeing the Earth from outer space. Go to 19.
In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. I think as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing and that we got to get through this together.
Everybody, I think, who's been up there to see that has had some kind of reaction, because when you're up there and you see that, the earth in that way, you don't see, the war. You can't see it. I suppose if there's a mushroom cloud, then you would see that, actually, but they're not seeing any of that. And it reminds you of the simplicity of mankind and who we are. And he's trying to get this across. And my question for you is, what inspires you? What do you find inspiring? That's a hard word to define, inspiration. Do you have something, though, that inspires you? Like, what makes you feel good about the country, or feel good about your life, or feel good about the direction of things, even in the midst of war and deception and the troubles that we have? What is it that inspires you, that lifts you up, that makes you understand the meaning of life? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. This is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. What inspires you? Give us a call. He's inspired because he gets to see the earth. I mean, how can you not be? How can you not look back, and you're dealing with your own bravery in being in that tin can flying through space, and you're there with 3 other people. The toilet wasn't working right, which, that's kind of a problem.
Okay.
And I guess they fixed it. I think they fixed that. But, that's not really something you want on your spacecraft to not work. He looks back and he sees this, and he has such a great thing to say, where he is able to make a theological statement in the whole idea of the specialness of Earth, that space is just nothing. And you go out in the universe, and honestly, there is all kinds of idea that maybe there's life somewhere else and this and that. But actually, when you get into the science of it, the chances are almost nothing that there's life somewhere else in the universe. Even with all those planets, there must be somewhere. Honestly, what it takes to have life, as far as everything we know, it's almost unlikely altogether. Just Earth. We are it. And we're that special. And that's what the Bible teaches us, is that we're special. Human beings are made in the image of God. This place has been put here in such a way that just a little bit to the left or right in our orbit, and it doesn't work. The fine-tuning, when you hear scientists talk about the fine-tuning of the Earth, of how life is able to survive, it's very difficult to believe it's just an accident. And that makes us pretty special. I find that to be inspiring. What do you find inspiring? Maybe you never think of that word. I'll try to define it in a second. But 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Here's the best definition I found of inspiration. It's a word that, when I think of it, I have days where I'm just so inspired to do the show, or to do something with my family, or something in life where I know this is what I want to do today, and it's inspiring. It's hard to define it, though, without using the word. And if you're going to define something, you have to define it without using the word. Like woman. You can't say a woman is somebody who feels like a woman. You can't say that. A woman is an adult human female. That's better. But I know not everybody understands that in our world today, actually. But what inspires you? Here's the best definition I found. Inspiration is a sudden or growing sense of motivation, clarity, or purpose that makes you think, create, or act. I think that's pretty good. As far as simplicity, what kinds of things inspire you? It can be, and I'm just getting the message here. The crew just made it around the moon, so now they're on their way back to Earth. Eric tells me that's pretty cool. They saw things back there that no human being has ever seen. That they are able, because of even the Apollo astronauts that went around the moon, they couldn't see much on the dark side of it. They didn't have the capability. Now we do. I imagine that, I think the Chinese government, though, has a probe back there. Am I right? Somebody should look that up. I feel like they landed something over there one time. There's probably already a mall, a Temu or something back there. That's why it's so cheap. I don't know. Maybe they saw something that we don't want to know about this back there. It's like, I don't think so. I think they saw a lot more rock and craters and those kinds of things. Anyway, they're on their way back. The whole thing to me, the fact that we can even do that, to me, is inspiring. It says that there are problems that we should be able. Jose saying that according to Transformers 3, which I have not seen, Dark Side of the Moon is there's dead Decepticon corpses on the dark side of the moon. Maybe that's what they saw. Maybe that's what they're going to say. Who knows what's back there?
Humiliations galore.
888-528-2557. You can be inspired emotionally, a spark that lifts you up, a feeling that something meaningful is possible. The moment when your heart says, yes, this matters. You kind of put your finger on it, the thing that really matters. You can have mental inspiration, fresh idea that wasn't there before. You ever just wake up or you're struggling through some problem and then all of a sudden you say, aha, and you figure something out. That's a great feeling, that kind of inspiration. Or you see something in a new way. You get some kind of clarity that cuts through the confusion of things. 888-528-2557. What inspires you? 888-528-2557. Rachel in Orange County, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, Pastor Scott. Thank you for taking my call. And I just want to say the most important thing and the real thing that really inspires me is the Word, is reading the Bible.
Scriptures.
I get the most inspiration from that to either put down the phone, turn off the TV, get out and move. So, as well as being spiritually fed. It's amazing just the way it's written. So that is my biggest inspiration. But also, what also inspires me is Google Earth. I got to say, Google Earth is amazing, and I have traveled the world at Google Earth, and it's just looking at our Earth. I was just at the Antarctica of Google Earth, and it's amazing, and it's like, wow, I want to go there, or I want to, visit this place. So, yeah, those two things, and of course, people in my life that are inspiring to get out and get me to move around, go for walks, friends in Christ, especially. It's great, and that's kind of a. Anyways, I just also wanted to say thank you for this episode, because I've been listening to it, and I'm going to play it back on Rumble for my son, because what you were talking about earlier, an hour ago or so, about Jesus and the resurrection, I just wanted to say God bless you for that. I will definitely go back to Rumble and play it for my son. It will resonate with him. So thank you for that. You are also an inspiration.
And it'll be on YouTube tomorrow, probably, if you want to send them there, too. We put it at Pastor Scott Show on Rumble, YouTube, social media.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
You're an inspiration, Scott.
Well, thank
Pastor
you.
Scott, to a lot of us.
Rachel,
Thank
I appreciate your call so much there, and I'm going to take a break, but I will talk about those things. She talked about, thank you, Rachel, for calling. She talked about going to Antarctica. You might not think that, and I don't really want to go, but I know somebody who went and walked around with all the penguins and everything on Antarctica. You can take a cruise down there, and you got to get a doctor's report and all this to do it. You can't just do it. And I thought, that's amazing that you can go to Antarctica today. That's kind of inspiring. And we'll talk a little bit more about what she was talking about when we come back in a moment. What inspires you? Like, what lifts you up? What turns a thought into action? What gives you hope? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Pastor Scott Show. Go to Pastor Scott Show to find our podcast live stream. All of our social media is at pastorscottshow.com. We will be back in 4 minutes. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're live. Final segment on the Pastor Scott Show. We're live every day from 3 to 5. Go to pastorscottshow.com to find our social media live stream and all of that. pastorscottshow.com. Podcast is right there. 888-528-2557 is the number if you want to join the conversation. What inspires you? What is it that brings you inspiration to act? 888-528-2557. I'll come back to that here in just a second. You know what? You might be inspired to be thinking about retirement, and I want to tell you about my friends over at Sanctuary Metals, because What they are inspired to do is help you move part of your IRA or 401k into physical gold and silver. A lot of people are looking at the world today and they're saying, you know what, I want my retirement to be more secure, less risk, and physical gold and silver is a great way to do that. And you can do that with an IRA or a 401k. And Sanctuary Metals will help you do that. So what you need is an old IRA or 401k that is from an old employer just sitting there. You need someone to manage it. You can transfer that over. Or if you're over 59 and a half, you might be able to roll over your current IRA or 401k with no taxes and penalties if you qualify. So you got to call them to find out. It takes about 15 minutes over the phone to get started. The phone number is 800-801-9877. Their team at Sanctuary Metals will walk you through everything right over the phone. They handle the paperwork. They're the custodian of all of it. And your metals are stored safely in IRS-approved vaults. So you don't have to keep them in your closet. They'll keep them in their IRS-approved vaults, giving you real peace of mind with that. So call Sanctuary Metals today, 800-801-9877, 800-801-9877. When you call, make sure you tell them that Pastor Scott sent you to see if you qualify for a no-fee-for-life precious metals IRA. You can learn more online at sanctuarymetals.com, sanctuarymetals.com, or call 800-801-9877. All right, let's go to clip 19.
In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. I think as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing and that we got to get through this together.
That is Victor Glover. He is the pilot of Artemis 2 that just made it around the moon. And that was him on Saturday talking about his thoughts and his inspiration when he takes a look at the Earth from outer space. And he can see the whole planet. And he's a believer, loves Jesus, a great testimony he's got. And he's, inviting us to consider the specialness of human beings. And we certainly are. We saw that great rescue of the downed pilot in Iran. We have seen so many other things that inspire us. And through the fog and the terrible things that we have to deal with war and deception and the troubles of life, whether it be $6 gas or the illnesses that we have that will eventually take our life, what inspires you along the way? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. By the way, you guys inspire me, our great listeners. Somebody sent me an Easter card, but your name wasn't on it. Like you signed it, but I can't read it. There's no return address right there. So, but I appreciate it. If you sent me and my family an Easter card here at the station, I did get it. I don't have a way to write you back or say thank you, but I'm saying thank you. 888-528-2557. Inspiration. It's funny, when I started thinking about this, I thought, how would I even describe that? It's one of those words that you have a hard time describing it. The best definition I found is inspiration is a sudden or growing sense of motivation, clarity, or purpose that moves you to think, create, or act. And our last caller talked about, Rachel talked about several things. She talked about being inspired by Google Earth. You know what that is? It's a software program where you can really travel all around the Earth. You ever use that, Jose? Google Earth. You go in there and I've used that to check out the house I grew up in. Is that creepy? I don't think so. You can't look in the house, but it's like, how are they doing it? And I noticed actually, and I haven't lived there since 1988. I moved out of that house. I was in high school. My basketball hoop is still up on the garage of that me and my dad installed. And should I ask for it back? Probably not.
No, don't ask for it. It's done for. But I remember when Google Earth came out, I was like, oh man, it's cool. I've migrated to Google Maps because it has that same feature where you could switch to layers to show a satellite point of view.
Right.
So I do that, and if you click on any point in the street, it drops you in there. You can look around, but then you can also look back at previous years and see how everything's changed throughout that neighborhood. So I've done that where you go search up where you used to live, and you're like, oh, that's where I used to live, and now look how it looks like now. And then I go back, but this is how it used to look like because I'm going back in the years.
Right, and it probably doesn't look as good now as it did then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing I find with it. It's like, what did you do to my house?
Yeah, now
You know?
there's just new buildings all around it.
Right. There used to be the vacant lots are gone. My city is gone, as the old song used to be. They put in a parking lot everywhere. But you know what? It's interesting to see the Earth that way, and you can go see Paris. You can go see places, and you're not. It's not the same as going. Obviously, I hope it doesn't replace that. There's some inspiration of that. You can be inspired emotionally, mentally, even behaviorally. It's the push. Inspiration is the push that helps you get moving. You know, what inspires you to take care of your health? You know you need to do it. You know you need to exercise. You know you need to go do that. What inspires you? You know, for some people, it's the heart attack they survive, and then you finally get around to it. But it would be better to get in shape before then, to start eating right. Behaviorally, the energy to act, to turn a thought into action. We all have some good ideas, but some people, you ever come up with a good idea and then you realize, I'm not going to do anything with that, but somebody else is going to do something and make $1 million. I think I've had a lot of those ideas, but I haven't been inspired to do anything about it. This is a shame. But I've been inspired to do other things. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. Before the break, Rachel talked about the inspiration in reading the Bible. And I wondered how many people understand that, who are inspired the same way. Because I'll tell you what, sometimes the inspiration comes only after you force yourself to do something that you don't want to do. And if you understand the scriptures, if you understand how the Bible works, why those books are in there, why they've been kept, what the history is of them, the history of the 1,500 years and 40 different writers all telling the same story from different cultures in 3 different languages. The Bible is written in originally Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic a little bit. When you understand how that works, it's actually very inspirational. When you understand how prophecy works and all of the stuff written that points not only to Jesus, but to empires that have ruled the earth, the Babylonians and the Persian Empire and the the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire, empires to come. And you look at that and you go, gosh, those things were written before that even happened. And then you get in the book of Daniel and you really study it. You got to study it. But you realize that it potentially predicts either the day of the birth or the day of the crucifixion or resurrection of Jesus, hundreds of years before it happens. Daniel chapter 9. I mean, it's incredible. When you begin to see how that works, and you begin to see how God has spoken into our history, the history of humanity, and how the Bible altogether is pointing us to what's actually happening in the world. You find that very inspiring because, they can get hopeless really quick. You watch the news, you pay attention to what's happening, you've got your ups and downs, but there's mostly downs. We were just talking about how, you check out your old neighborhood and it's worse than it was. It might have been bad when you were there and it's probably not better. But the truth is it can get better. Some people have been inspired to say, you know what, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We're going to make things better. I like to live in that world. I think that a Christian in particular should live in a world of optimism. Ultimately, we should be optimistic because Jesus is coming back. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you recognize that the world is going exactly the way as God planned it. So you can be optimistic that nothing is falling apart. Everything is falling into place. It's a great way to live. But in the meantime, maybe Jesus is coming back soon. Maybe he's not coming for 1,000 years. Maybe we're going to put a base on the moon and we're going to launch people to go to Mars. Some people think that's a waste of time and money. Might be right. But it might lead to all kinds of technological advances that really helps reduce poverty or changes our world. I like to look at the problems that we see in our communities, whether it be homelessness or violence or poverty or other things, and to look at that and say, you know what? I think we can do better. I think that there are solutions. Maybe tomorrow or later in the week, we'll talk about all the fraud and everything that's going on. You can look at that and go, gosh, things are really falling apart. Or you can look at that and go, if we really got a handle on this, then it turns out there's an awful lot of money available so that people could have less taxes and we could get more done. Or maybe the inspiration is maybe the government's the wrong group of people to take care of the homeless. Maybe we can do a whole lot more together in our churches and in our ministries in different ways. I think we can. See, I would hope that when you understand what the Bible is and you realize that it's inspired by God and that it's telling you about what life is about, what our purpose is, why we're here, what's going to happen eventually, and what we're supposed to do in the meantime. When you realize all of that, it should be very inspirational to your life, and it'll help you get into the scriptures because, yeah, you might open your Bible. Maybe you crashed and burned somewhere in Leviticus when you started reading the Bible the first of the year, right? Where are we? April. A lot of people didn't make it through their Bible in a year plan. It's hard. But when you start to realize how many of those things are pointing to us now, how much meaning there is, even the hardest passages to understand are very inspirational, but you got to go there. So if I can give you any inspiration at all to even start to understand the scriptures, to read the Bible, to do devotions, to do all of that, to trust the Lord with your life, maybe begin with just having an optimistic attitude that says, you know what, this is possible. And the difficulties that are going on in our life, there are great paths forward if we want to take them, as not just as individuals, but as people together. That's a big thing that the church does, by the way, is we are gathered together to do great things in the name of the living God who created this earth, the earth that is so inspiring, whether you're an astronaut or just somebody sitting at your desk looking at Google Earth or Google Maps. There's something inspiring about God's creation, and he's put you in it. We'll end with that today. Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com. We'll see you tomorrow live from 3 to 5, like we're on every day from 3 to 5. Get the podcast at pastorscottshow.com. See you tomorrow.